And we can start presenting. It's taking a while for me. Sorry for the delay, guys. My laptop is
I mean, if you want, I can present the notes, but I can't. I'm not really good at writing them down, though.
Yeah, Jonathan is doing that.
Okay.
Let's see. What's the link to the notes? I guess it's in the meeting invite, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
No problem. Today is 424.
Yeah, so Quinton, you cleaned up the doc as we discussed last time. So thanks a lot for that.
Sure.
Yeah, I see we have a lot on the agenda today, so let's get started. The first is the cluster versions queue issue that Maru brought up. You can, Jonathan, click on the link. So yeah, there were multiple issues, as I said last time. The main one was how to determine if a field is supported, and Swagger Stack seems like the right thing to me to figure that out. But we still don't have a clear answer for what to do if a field is not supported. Like, what should be the default, and we give the user an option, and how do we implement that?
I mean, for implementation purposes, I think those issues are separable, like detecting that there's a field difference and then actually dealing with it. So, I mean, if that's a priority for 1.7, I would say we could start work on getting the detection mechanism in place, and then we'll have time to figure out the best strategy or best configuration options for the user to deal with differences.
Yeah. I think we have enough discussion here that someone can actually own it and like come up with a doc which explains what we want to do. Like come up with a probable design, and then we can discuss it with more details.
A design for the entire problem, so all 4 points, or just four?
Yeah, like the design would have all 4.
Okay.
But I'm saying, like, I think that we could split it up.
Mm-hmm.
Rather than having to sort of pause implementation until we have everything done, just focus on like designing for detection of the differences and implementing that, and then separately, because I think that the other one's a lot more vague. Like, how should a user be able to deal with it? You know, what kind of status indication should they get? All that.
Yeah, and it could end up being either very complex because I mean you can't necessarily specify an overriding behavior for all objects. And you could imagine a world in which the user wants certain objects to have some overriding and others not to. You have to decide, is that something that we want to let the user do, or it doesn't seem, I agree, it's not straightforward to do what to do if a field is not supported.
And I mean, this kind of ties into the need for, I don't know, like status is maybe what I've been thinking about it as, but I mean, up to now, the goal has been like, I want to be able to propagate objects to these clusters, and I want to make sure that that's consistent over time and when new clusters come on. But I think that there's a lack of visibility into the system. You know, if I'm federating resources, how do I know which resources have been successfully federated? How do I know, you know, when there's a problem, what the problem was? And that doesn't even begin to touch what happens when we talk about policy and how we resolve policy conflict. So this is kind of a separate issue, and it's not on the agenda, but I really think that's important to raise this cycle and start thinking about, if not implementing.
Yeah. For the second problem, we do generate events which help you understand like what all clusters has this propagated to, or if there was an error, what the error was. But I do agree, and I'm fine with splitting this up as well. I'm not sure if anyone here has bandwidth who would like to take this up for 1.7, but if someone is open to that, that would be great.
So the question of events, I guess I'm thinking like from a user perspective, are events something that a user could get access to? Or is that an admin thing?
The users do. Can I suggest we've got a lot to get through this week, including prioritizing all of the 1.7 work. So I would suggest that we, hive off a separate group, whoever's interested in this whole topic, I think all of the issues you mentioned, Maru, there are actually solutions to. So I would suggest that we put a design, whoever has the time and inclination to put a design document around the version SKU handling should do that, and we can all comment and discuss that and have a meeting about it if we need to. But I don't think we have time to design it here.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. So does someone want to take it up? As the next step would be like write a detailed doc.
I guess if nobody else is volunteering.
Well, to be clear, it doesn't have to happen for 1.7. We've survived.
Yeah.
It's not ideal, but I don't think it's a train smash if we just say your FCP must be the same version at the moment. Most of these things are not even in production anyway. They're alpha and beta, and until we graduate out of there, the versions have to line up. Otherwise, it does slightly weird things.
Yeah. If anyone does want to volunteer, they can just CC themselves and post it on the issue, and that should be good.
Sounds good.
In the events that would be something we did have time for in 1.7, is that something that would require like feature, or is that just like something under the covers?
What do you mean?
Yeah, it's something I was thinking about when I was filling in the features list yesterday. I mean, the definition of features says that what they are, how big they are, and their user facing and all that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And explicitly excludes things like unit test fixing and refactoring and a whole bunch of other things. But some of these things we have explicitly prioritized for given releases. So the last release, for example, we decided we were going to put a lot of energy into stabilizing our tests, but that can't go in the feature repo because of the definition of feature, blah, blah, blah. So I think we're either going to have to bend the definition of features and just jam these kinds of things in anyway, or we're going to have some parallel list of things that we're working on which do not qualify as features. In this particular case, I think this is actually a feature.
Okay. So yeah, it's probably unlikely we'd have time to have something ready to go into the features repo and whatever. So yeah, okay.
Well, so about that, I actually personally quite like the idea where we identify reasonably well-defined features that are missing. I'm reasonably comfortable putting them in the features repo and labeling them as some future version as opposed to any specific one. I don't know if anyone else disagrees, and I don't know if that contradicts any other advice that's been given, but we need some well-defined place, I think, to kind of put these things down, because I get at conferences and elsewhere, I get questions about, when are you guys, how are you going to handle security to clusters? And it's really handy to be able to send them to the features repo and say, look, that's where it is. Here's the status. There is or isn't a design document. There is or isn't a plan to release it in a given version, rather than having that stuff scattered in everybody's brains all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I agree. I think features repo is good. I generally link them to the spreadsheet that we have, which has links to all the issues.
Okay.
And that is like Federation specific, so they can just look at the Federation things we're doing. But we can do that same with the repo as well, pointing to all issues with the Federation label.
Yeah, I think the general inclination is to move away from a plethora of spreadsheets and into.
Yes.
So I think we should standardize on that.
Yep.
I don't know. I'm a little bit hesitant to say spreadsheets should go away, because GitHub is really terrible at providing the kind of view that a spreadsheet can provide, like arbitrary, and being able to because I've looked at the list of say issues or Federation or work in progress, and it's amorphous to the uninitiated. I mean, I agree that it needs to be visible, but the spreadsheet gives you a tabular summary, and until GitHub has a similar capability, I'm not sure I'd want to give that up. But that's just my personal.
So yeah, I mean, anybody can keep their own spreadsheets or whatever, but at some point, as soon as you have multiple copies of the same information, they get out of sync. One is true and the other one is false, and it's ambiguous as to where to send people to. So yeah, I mean, I totally agree with all of the issues you raised. I'm just not sure that having multiple copies of the same information out of sync with each other is the best solution. I would imagine it'd be pretty straightforward to build a little tool that sits on top of GitHub that will extract all of these issue things and tabulate them in any way you like. And that sounds like a project.
I don't know any SIG that's done that, so.
This is David Ronchik. So from that perspective, that's done. I think that was Christian speaking earlier. Christian, if you and Quentin would like to connect with me, I'll get some folks on the line to do it. That said, we're not married. You know, when we went to the feature repo, we never suggested that there was one and only one tool out there. The problem we had is we needed a single place that tracked versions over time, allowed assignments back and forth to people, and that was free flowing to allow comments that persisted indefinitely. That's basically why we said, you know what, spreadsheets are good as a summary, but they're not an ongoing tool. And so again, if there's other things that we want to choose as a SIG, that makes total sense. You know, Trello, or I don't know, we can figure out a way to make spreadsheets work in that way, but that's why we ended up with the features repo.
Yeah, I think the features repo makes sense. If we can just build a slightly more convenient view onto it, like Maru said, which seems totally doable and like a kind of a fun part-time project for somebody who wants to potter around with these things, it would seemingly be very valuable to multiple SIGs rather than, yeah.
No worries. I will. I'll spin up the org. This is a third-party group that has been a long-time contributor to Kubernetes, and they have their own solutions that we at Google are going to pay for. But they're going to open it up to everyone. So I'll sync up. Was it Maru and you, Quentin, or anyone else want to be part of that meeting?
I don't actually have to be part of it, but yeah, okay. I prefer not to be.
All right. So then, if you don't mind, can I take like ask someone to put together a doc on what you might require as in our roll-up tool?
Sure.
That'd be great. And then send it my way.
Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you so much.
Sure.
However, I just caution as we come up to deadlines that the single pane of glass that we have right now for tracking at least Federation features and Federation issues that don't fall under the features repo is in the spreadsheet. And as deadlines start coming up, we'll need to ping people and make sure everything gets in and ready before these dates.
I would say that there's like a general just need for reporting capability to come out of GitHub. I mean, I'm kind of involved with the release side of things, and like being able to look at bugs and know which SIGs, you know, are on them and what's the status of those issues. Like an issue tracker does that. Any good issue tracker, and GitHub is just a terrible issue tracker, and we need to somehow make it work for a really large project as an issue tracker.
You got it. So if you don't mind sending over the existing sheet that is a single pane of glass that you like from any project, we will recreate that in this tool.
Sounds great. The spreadsheet's linked here somewhere, I think. Anyway, so we're 20 minutes into a 60-minute meeting, and we have to prioritize all of the 1.7 features and get them captured in issues today, I believe, is the plan. Should we limit the time we spend on the other things in this agenda just so that we can get through that, or perhaps jump to those features and prioritize them and then come back to this agenda once we have completed that?
Sure. I think we can jump to features because in terms of features, there's not that many, and the deadline is Wednesday for that one.
Okay, cool. So let's do that. There's a link to all of them in the meeting invite. Maybe I should just add it to the agenda.
A link to features?
Well, to the Federation features that are on the table at the moment. There's a little bit of...
Is it the 1.7 spreadsheet or is it something else?
It's the features repo, the thing that has to be done by Wednesday.
I don't see a link in the meeting invite.
Sorry, yes, I did put one in, and I realized there was something wrong with the permission, so I don't think it got propagated to everybody else. I'm gonna stick it in the notes here now under other.
Perfect. Thank you.
There we go.
Oh, I'm linkified. There we go.
We have a lot of them.
Well, so that is all of the features that are currently there that are open. And so there are a couple that I think we can trivially close and or there's a bit of a process here that I don't know whether it's been agreed upon yet. There are milestones 1.5, 1.6, 1.7, and then one called next milestone, which I'm not sure what the intention for that is. And we have a bunch here that are labeled 1.7, which I just went through them yesterday. They're intended to be the things that we think we would like to put in 1.7. And then there's a bunch of next milestone ones which we haven't decided yet, or which probably won't make it into 1.7. So if that's a way that we're comfortable working, we can carry on doing that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I do see some of them, like federated config map is also marked next milestone. I assume it's just not updated.
Well, there's another question, which is how we handle alpha, beta, and release. We originally had things called, alpha in 1.5, beta in 1.6, etc., labels like that, which have now been deprecated. Now we've got stage alpha, stage beta, etc., and a separate field for the release. But it's not clear to me what we should do to track that this feature was alpha in release 1.5 and went to beta in 1.6 and went to GA in 1.7, for example. I guess you will actually see that if you go and dig through the particular feature, you will see that the release was changed from this to that, and the label was changed from alpha to beta. So you could go and find out what happened. Maybe that's reasonable. I'm not totally sure what the person who set up the features repo. It's not clear to me how they intended us to use these things. David, do you have any answers to that or any insight?
Hey, I'm sorry, I was called away. What was the question?
Okay, so we have this features repo. We have there's a release. What is it called? Milestone field, which can be 1.6, 1.7, or next milestone. And then there are a set of labels: stage alpha, stage beta, stage release. And then there are a bunch of deprecated labels, which are like alpha in 1.5, beta in 1.6, etc. So the way I have used this right now is to take the current state of the feature and reflect it in its milestone and its stage. And then as the feature moves from alpha to beta to whatever, we change the milestone and we change the label so that we can see where we are. Is that the intended use of these labels and things?
Yes, that is exactly it. And the idea behind next was, you were trying to basically have something in between, a defined one, a defined milestone, where frequently you might miss it, and just say, look, you'd like to take this on for the next one, but you can't commit to 1.7. Okay,
so next means not 1.7.
Next means not
1.8 or beyond. Okay, that makes sense.
Yes, unless something has changed, and I think this is an appropriate question for SIG-PM, and I will be happy to ask it.
Okay, so it's more like some future milestone. The next milestone presumably is 1.7.
Right.
But anyway, okay, cool. So we will use it that way. The one downside of this is that there's no way that you can go to a single place and say, oh, I can see this feature was alpha in 1.5, beta in 1.6, and GA in 1.7. You'd have to dig through the history of each one of these features to find out, when it went alpha and when it went beta. So all you would see here is the current status, which is the plan is to make it, GA in 1.7.
Well, there's an alternative that I have seen some groups use, and this is totally an alternative. Your feature is federated resource quota alpha, and then you have the label stage alpha just for the purposes of sorting. But when that feature is done, you close it and you create a federated resource quota beta.
Okay, and you somehow chain all of these together so that you can see them. Yeah, I guess you still kind of lose some of it, but that's understandable. So I don't really care either way. I just want to be consistent with everybody else who's using it. Otherwise, this features repo becomes useless because you can't, filter if each SIG is doing it differently. So if you can just tell us which of those two approaches to use, we will, I think, use it. You're muted, David.
Yes, I am muted. Sorry, I will send a note right now and ask explicit from the SIG PM.
Okay. So until we get an answer there, we'll just use a single issue per feature, and we will just roll it forward from alpha to beta to GA, and we will change that if we hear otherwise from the PM group. Excellent. Should we just work out, we got 17 of them here, should we just work our way through them one at a time and agree who's working on them, what version, etc. Should be reasonably quick, I think.
Okay. So I see resource quota feature. Do you know who's working on it? I don't think it was part of our spreadsheet.
Yes. So we have a full design for it. I put a comment at the bottom. I was not able to assign it to the person actually working on it, something to do with permissions, but I put a comment there as to who exactly is working on it. And there it is.
Yeah, so generally what we do is, like you already know, like we create an issue in the core repository as well, where we have the discussion and they can post the link to the design and CC other people. I don't know if that's already done, but that would be the next step.
The design has been done internally at Huawei, and we just wanted to send it through internal review before sending it for external review, and that should happen this week.
Okay. And when we were creating the spreadsheet, we also made sure that for each feature, there's a feature owner and there's also a reviewer to make sure there's enough review bandwidth, because what happened in 1.6 was with jobs, there was someone who implemented it, but we didn't have enough time to review, which we don't want to do in 1.7.
Sure. So, yeah, we can provide the implementer and the reviewer.
Awesome.
Anybody else who wants to chime in is obviously welcome, but it doesn't need to take up anybody else's time.
Awesome. Would you be the reviewer?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Then I assume it's the same for stateful sets and jobs.
Yes.
Yes, for stateful sets, I think we have assigned me as the implementer, and Maru did chime in for the review.
Okay. Yeah, I know SIG apps would be interested in stateful sets as well. I know Eric Tune especially, and other people from SIG apps, and similarly for jobs as well.
Yeah, labeled
plus. Yes, plus about the design, I think I would want somebody from this SIG to review the design per se, because I have received many comments on it, but probably nobody from this Federation SIG.
Stateful set, I did review it. I left a
Yes. Yeah, I saw one or two comments only from you.
Yeah,
I thought you have just gone through like an overview.
I did not have any specific.
as well.
Okay. And you said Maru was the assigned reviewer for this?
As far as I remember, I mean, that's what I remember.
Sorry.
In the spreadsheet, that is what is mentioned. If you see the spreadsheet.
Yeah. So I assume, yeah, at some point, Maru, can you take a look?
Yeah, sorry for the delay. I'll take a look at it this week.
Thanks, Maru.
Great.
We should definitely get someone from SIGAPS to review the proposals because they have a lot of experience working through these issues. They have experience.
Yeah, they have done that already.
Yeah, okay. I saw Clayton left a number of comments. Yeah.
Yes, he did. Yes.
Great. I know, same for jobs, and Quinton is reviewing. For pod autoscaler,
The design is reviewed and we sort of concluded, but I haven't raised a PR in the community for the design yet. I'll do that subsequently. Implementation is ongoing. I would probably complete it in a week or two.
Let's just make sure that we get the design submitted to the community and approved before we do lots of implementation.
Sure, I'll do that firsthand within a couple of days.
policy-based resource placement. I know Torin is working on it. The design was merged, and he's working on the alpha implementation, which we want to target for 1.7.
Yeah, and there's an initial pull request up for the admission controller, Nikhil, so we can probably discuss that maybe in the next week or two.
Great.
I'm a little bit concerned at the number of things that are depending on how we think about policy and how we apply it, and this is one of them. And we're just kind of going on this anyway. I don't want to sort of devolve into unrelated, but like I just think we really need to have a discussion as a group about this stuff before we move forward.
Yeah. So I don't think we need to block this, but I do agree that we need to discuss path to beta for all the annotation alpha features that we are implementing, and that is a more generic discussion. And I saw you had sent a doc.
Right. I guess my concern though is that the current design of this feature is predicated on a lot of assumptions. Like number one, the fact that we're federating resources and applying metadata per resource, and I'm not sure that's realistic. And I'd like to at least have a discussion about, you know, that issue before we say, yes, we need this specific implementation based on these assumptions. Anyway, I'll stop.
Yeah, and we did have some of that discussion in the issue as well. I agree with the generic point. I don't think that the current implementation is too tied to the annotation stuff. It does assume that there'll be something on the resource which it can use to specify which all clusters it should go to. And right now it's using cluster selection.
Right, but I'm saying that design says, yes, we need an admission controller. Yes, we need to actually build stuff in to be able to do that. I'm saying that, I'm not sure that assumption should hold. Anyway,
well,
like I said, we really need to discuss this separately so we don't block this prioritization.
Let's comment on the design there. And just to remind everyone, this is an alpha feature. So the intention is, you know, publish something which has not yet decided upon API to invite feedback from users. That is the intention of an alpha feature. I mean, clearly we shouldn't completely screw it up and build something that we think is ridiculous, but it doesn't have to be correct. And it can be changed afterwards. That's the intention of an alpha API.
Okay. So next is federated config map.
Nikhil, I just need one more point. So regarding that pod autoscaler, I saw that one of the PRs that I raised to move, that's just moving around code to some common, you assign to margin. I think we need to find somebody else whom these PRs might be assigned to for review. If not,
I thought who was the reviewer owner for pod autoscaler?
You and Madhu.
Oh,
no, not for pod autoscaler. Pod autoscaler probably is. I'm not sure. We need to see the spreadsheet.
Yeah, I see Marcin here.
Yeah, Marcin is there and Madhu is there.
Yeah.
What I mean to say is Marcin might not be able to take up jobs from this thing, right? So then Maru, it falls into your code. So maybe you need to assign it to him.
Christian, do you have a definitive answer on that? Is Marcin officially not working on any Federation stuff anymore? It was a bit ambiguous last time, I think.
The latest update I have is that right now we probably shouldn't be assigning anything to him for the 1.7 cycle. Nothing more definitive than that.
Okay, I'll speak to him directly sometime, but yeah, for the meantime, let's assume he doesn't exist for the next 3 months.
Okay.
So Irfan, feel free to reassign to Maru.
I won't be. Okay, I'll do that. I'll do that. Yes.
Or you can ping me the PR. And
Sure. I'll do that. I forgot that I can.
Okay. So similarly for config map, it's assigned to Marchand.
So that one I think is a leftover. That one is the original issue, and then we were going to move it to beta at some point. And I don't know if we still want to do that. I didn't correlate this against the spreadsheet.
Yeah. You don't really have any known issues for config maps. I mean, I'm fine calling it beta. There was, I think, one issue. We didn't have any E2E test at all for config map. Yes, that I remember now. So we should fix that. Like, ensure we have enough testing. Maybe we don't have any known issues because we don't have testing. But
well, there's the other problem about cluster selection. If you want to send a config map to a subset of clusters, is that resolved? I mean, that method of selecting clusters, is that all in? I saw there was a PR about cluster selection, but we can't go
that
GA.
should still be an alpha feature. So I don't want to tie that to like all those resources. When I say like a config map is beta, I would say like the use case of spreading config map around to all the clusters, that works. And like it's federated across all clusters. Having the ability to restrict it to a specific set of clusters. Yes, we'll have an alpha implementation in 1.7, but I'm not sure we need to block config map beta on that.
I'm not totally, I mean, we could go that way. I'm not totally convinced that the ability to only federate to all clusters is kind of beta quality. I would imagine that the bar would be that you can at least, choose a subset of clusters.
I see this similar to like what we did in Kubernetes, the taints and tolerance stuff and the other stuff to restrict resources on specific nodes. I do see value in it, and I definitely think we should implement it, but I'm not on the same page that we should block like config map beta for that.
It's not specific to config map in any case. I mean, really, you're going to be distributing applications. You're not going to be distributing individual resources, and there needs to be a way to decide where those application resources go as a group. But yeah, I would be on board of not blocking config map because it is a larger issue.
Yeah, I mean, I think that whole topic is maybe worth agreeing on, because the Kubernetes API fundamentally does not actually deal with applications. It deals with the things that applications are built out of. And it is fundamentally...
Right, but we're talking about the difference between a developer, I'm implementing federation of resources, versus how I view it as a user. It may be fine if I'm dealing with an individual cluster to say, I'm just dealing with a per resource. Oh, here's my secret, here's my config map. But realistically, especially when I think about how I want to move, like how I want to actually federate like an application, like I'm going to be thinking in a larger scale. It's not the same thing as Kubernetes, and I don't think we should cling to that belief.
I agree with the application model.
I agree with that, but yeah, let's have a separate discussion about that. I don't want to bring everything to a grinding halt because we don't have an application abstraction in Kubernetes or Federation API. I mean, we've got Helm and all of these things, and we can certainly start looking and thinking about them. And I think we need to provide, the basic building blocks that you can do the kinds of things you're describing. For example, by choosing a specific cluster or set of clusters to put things in at the Federation API level. And yes, I agree, people will use those to make sure that their application ends up in the right place, and etc., and that their config map ends up in the same clusters as their replica set or whatever is using it. But I don't think we need to solve all of those problems right now.
I think that was the agreement, that it's like a larger issue, and yes, we're not going to solve it all right now, but
okay, cool.
Just more that like we don't want to block things on it because it needs to be solved separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So for coming back to federated config map, I would say the remaining item is ensure we have enough testing.
And that's going to come from Jonathan porting it to the new generic sync controller, for which there are already tests. So
Yeah.
So we can assign it to you.
Yeah. I'll leave a comment here.
Great.
Right, and there's a known flake also in the config map.
There's a known flake for config map
Yeah, I know. Maybe we look up.
or in unit test.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, now I remember that. Yeah.
Um,
Okay, while Jonathan is updating, the next issue is HA Federation control plane. It is also not assigned to anyone and it's not marked 1.7. Is anyone interested, or we can just move on?
In fact, did we have somebody who was planning to upstream that to 1.7?
Yeah. So this is Shashi. Shashi, you want to talk? Yeah, Shashi is already working on that. He's almost actually.
Yeah,
completed.
actually, yeah, from Huawei we had put up a design, but it's like technical feasibility is not completed yet. So we are doing small pieces actually. So leader election feature was one part of it, and I also I think it should be reviewed by the much bigger audience, I believe. I think Federation. I think many people have not seen that design document, I believe. So I think we can also work on that design going forward. It's definitely not in there for 1.7, but maybe we can target it to the next milestone.
That makes sense.
So it is marked next milestone for now. So just leave it as is.
Yeah, I think I'll put up a link for the design in this so that everybody can have a look.
Yeah. Great. Next was matrix-based cluster selection. Yeah, I know Marcin was interested in it, but we haven't done much progress. So yeah, I don't know if anyone working on it.
Yeah, let's leave it in the future. We will need to do it in the future, and I know how to do it. I think just haven't put a design doc together, but it won't make it into 1.7.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So the next is federated daemon set. I know in Kubernetes we've added support for rolling update for daemon sets, so we'll have to port that to Federation as well before we say beta. I'm not sure we have enough bandwidth.
I don't think we have enough bandwidth to get this in 1.7.
Yeah. So this is another task which is.
It's in alpha already, right?
Daemon sets is alpha, yeah.
So this is just promoting it to beta. I mean, it does raise a more general question, which is, when we support a given version of a given API object in Federation,
yeah.
Can we, I don't want us to end up playing catch up with all of these types, because there are constantly things being added to many of the API types.
Yes.
And I don't want us not to be able to graduate out of alpha until we support the latest, greatest features of any given type. Another example came up recently, yesterday, with jobs. They're busy adding a job queue thing and whatever, and we obviously don't have that in Federation yet. So I would be inclined to say we should go to beta with daemon sets as they were when they went to whatever stage they went to.
Yeah, but the problem with that is like the rolling update. Sorry?
Daemon sets in Kubernetes without rolling updates or in-place updates or whatever they are, those are actually GA in Kubernetes, right?
Yeah.
So I think we should target that as the first milestone. So GA, that's that version of daemon set in a federated form, and then add whatever things were added to daemon set after it went GA.
Yeah. So the problem actually is that when they added rolling update support to daemon sets. Yeah, I was going to say when we added support for rolling update to daemon sets in Kubernetes, there were API changes as well. And since we share the same API, we do have those fields in federated daemon sets. And like as a user, I could read the API documentation of federated daemon sets do support these fields. I can set them. I can submit a daemon set which says I want rolling update, and then it doesn't happen. So that's not the user expectation is not good there. Yeah.
We should find a way to lock into the old version of the API then for each individual object.
Yes, that's essentially morally what I was proposing, that there is a daemon set in Kubernetes 1.5 which doesn't have rolling updates, but which is GA. I'm making up stuff, but I think that's true. And we should be able to say that daemon set we support.
Yeah, I think it's an extensions v1 beta 1 in Kubernetes. I'll have to check, but I think it is an extensions beta 1, so it might not be GA.
Okay.
And I do agree we'll have the problem of catching up, but I think once we are beta as well with the same resource, then when we change the API in Kubernetes, we can require that the same change should be made in Federation as well. And
I just don't think I think that's going to slow us down a lot, because we're not going to be able to beta or GA anything until we've caught up to the latest, greatest version of Kubernetes.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be a continually moving target. And we, in the extreme case, we'll never be able to do anything because we'll never be up to the latest, greatest thing. And I don't want us to get into that situation. There are tons of people out there using daemon sets as they were at version 1.5 or 6 or whatever, and they want to federate them, and they should be able to do that. And the ones who, essentially nobody will have adopted the new thing yet because it's barely, if at all, in Kubernetes. So holding ourselves to that bar seems counterproductive.
Yeah. So to do what Dan alluded to, I was just going to say to do what Dan and both of you are alluding to, have our own API version and locking to it, so that if Kubernetes adds some features, we are not impacted. We can do that. To do that, we'll have to maintain our own API machinery code as well. Right now, we just reuse whatever there is in Kubernetes. If we want to sort of diverge or fork it, we'll have to maintain our own versions.
Yeah, that sounds like a big problem. It sounds like we need to think more about this, but let's put it on the table and have a discussion on the pros and cons of, the two different, essentially they're two different approaches, both have pros and cons, and we need to weigh them up and decide which one to choose.
Yeah. So for now, we are saying there's no owner for federated daemon sets to beta.
Not that I'm aware of. Who was on the spreadsheet?
I'm going to pick it up without the rolling updates.
Oh, just Christian. Okay.
Okay. So the next one is deployments. And for this, I know Martin had an open design, which Jonathan...
I was planning to figure out and implement.
Yeah. So this is assigned to Jonathan, and we can mark it 1.7.
Yeah, we can mark this 1.7.
Awesome.
Beautiful.
The next is support generalized. Yeah, for this, I am an owner, and we have most of the implementation in 1.6. The API server supports it. There's one item remaining for kubectl delete that we'll definitely do in 1.7. I've updated it to say milestone 1.7.
And is that beta or alpha?
It was alpha, and I don't really have a clear list of issues, blockers for beta. So it's up to us when we want to mark it beta.
Keep it as alpha then.
Yeah. Great. So next is hybrid cloud federated ingress. Yeah, I don't know if anyone working on this, and it's
that was dreamt up last year, and I think we never put resources on it.
Yeah.
That came out of some requirements from GKE back in the day, and I think we just leave it on the backlog at the moment, unless anybody else wants.
Fast and painless. So this was kubefed to beta, Madhu?
kubefed is already in beta, and we should just set the milestone to next milestone and change the label to stage/GA and assign Jonathan as an owner for that. Jonathan, does it make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I think there's at this point ongoing little bits of work, but it is in beta. There's things we know we have to do. There might be there'll be some small things I think that get in for 1.7. There was an issue with credentials that might be worth getting in for 1.7, which we've talked about quite a bit about service accounts and RBAC and that.
Okay. So I'll update the issue, assign it to Jonathan and add 1.7.
Cool.
Next is generalized cluster selection and weighting. So the first part of it, generalized cluster selection, Dan Wilson is working on it, which we talked about earlier. It would just be an alpha. It's based on annotations right now, but the aim is to get it in 1.7.
I think there's been commentary on that. Quentin's I think it's assigned to me, and it's related to that preliminary doc about whether to move.
So if you decide to have multiple different issues for alpha and beta, I guess like the alpha one we can still assign to Dan Wilson, and we need a path to beta, which we've discussed before, and maybe it's a bigger issue.
Mm-hmm. Maybe we should just make sure we all talk about the same thing here. So as far as I'm concerned, we have generalized cluster selection and weighting in annotations at the moment, and it's used by multiple resource types. The implementation itself might be not perfectly generalized, but certainly the API is not specific to any particular type.
No, so right now it is specific for replica sets and deployments.
Yeah, and weighting is specific to types that can be weighted. Cluster selection, though, is not necessarily specific to Oracle.
Are you referring to the API or to the implementation?
The API itself.
Okay, I was unaware of that. Okay, yeah, we should generalize that then. Let's do that. That's fine.
So I did raise a PR for that actually. The API structures are fairly generic. Only the names were problematic. They were all using replica set kind of names. So I have moved it into a common kind of API code and some utility functions also into common code.
Is this doing cluster selection based on cluster name?
The replica set preferences and deployments preferences.
Yes. So
okay.
Preferences are specified using annotations, and that is what I'm talking about.
Yeah. The one that Dan Wilson has, those are based on labels. Those are generic. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the idea of using of generalizing something that's based on cluster names is at the very least concerning.
Yeah. Yeah.
But this is tied into, like, should we be using annotations? Are there other mechanisms? And also the issue of, resource versus application federation. So, I mean, there's just things to talk about. I certainly have opinions, but I'm not saying they're correct. But I don't think we've really gone through, we haven't really gone through a process of codifying, like, what are the use cases and what's the best solution? To me, it's like we've gotten a good solution for some of the use cases based on like what's quickest to implement. What can we get out in front of users? And I think at this point we just need a little bit more thought to go into it.
So Maru,
actually, I'm fine with. Sorry, go ahead, Quentin.
I was just going to say some of this, Maru, is unfortunately a result of you having joined sort of later in the project. So for this stuff in particular for the replica set stuff, there was a design document and people did consider use cases. And so
I'm not criticizing that you're implementing for that. It's more like if we're talking about doing something that's generally applicable and we start considering policy, the problem space just becomes a lot bigger. And so the discussion needs to reflect that. I'm not.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the intention of a design document that gets sent out for review. Absolutely.
So I was going to say, I'm fine adding another meeting where everyone who's interested, we can have discussion based on this, because this topic has come up many times and we just say, like, this meeting, we only have an hour and we have so many topics to discuss. So I'm fine scheduling a specific one for this specific topic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, that would be good.
Okay, so I can do that. Okay, we have 5 minutes left. So the next one was, per user cluster authentication, authorization, and audit logging. So I did send out a doc with more details, and I did present it at SIG Auth as well. And the feedback I got there was impersonation gives a lot more power than users want or what Federation should get. So I got a lot of pushback against using impersonation powers. There was another idea which came up in the comments on the doc, which was use OAuth-based authentication, but then that would require all the underlying clusters to have homogeneous auth. So that is something I'm looking at right now.
Mm.
So you're saying that it's unlikely that this is going to get into 1.7?
I'm still trying. There's no clear path forward right now, but I'm still trying.
From the SIG auth side, there were just a lot of concerns about the proposed method that was going to be used. I think there are lots of conversations and docs that can follow up on that. But yeah, from our side, there was a bit of concern of the proposed feature as is.
Makes sense. I would be very happy if even if we didn't implement anything, if we actually just got agreement that this is exactly what we're going to do in the next month or two. I think that would be huge progress. So rather than stop working on it now because we can't get into 1.7, we should just carry on working on it and get it done as fast as possible. And
Agreed. So I'm on it.
Something that wasn't really discussed, but maybe I'll follow up with you offline, is the possibility that maybe you just restrict federation to a set of namespaces or a certain criteria, so that maybe you give whatever auth mechanism to a given cluster full access to these namespaces, but not access to the whole cluster, because that would at least alleviate the concern that you're giving root basically.
Yeah, and that is possible today. And I did file a separate issue with another idea where rather than using a single service account for whole of federation, we can use namespace scoped service accounts. So if you want to federate, use federation only for, let's say, 2 namespaces, you can create 2 service accounts for each of those namespaces. And Eric actually replied on that issue saying, even today, the single identity that you're using, you can use IBAC and give that identity access to only 2 namespaces, the one that you're providing to federation control planes. So for that, you don't really need to change a lot.
I think it'd be extremely prudent to do some recommendations based off what exists today. And I'm happy to help out with whoever is trying to take that on. Yeah.
That would be fantastic.
Sorry, what was the question?
No, I said it would be great to have someone who's actively involved in SIG auth and knows exactly what's going on there to sit down with us and help us design this thing. Because
Cool. I'll follow up with people afterwards.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I see 2 more, and we have 2 more minutes. So one was private federated services. Again, it's marked next milestone. I think it's fine to have us on the backlog.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The last one is interesting. Federated read access to cluster API objects. We've had a lot of discussions, and I have a design in mind. And I had sent out one earlier, but we've had some discussions after that. If someone is ready to implement it, I can clean that up and send it. I can work with Cindy, I believe it was, to implement it as well.
Yes, that's correct.
Awesome. So I'll probably send you links to the existing ones, so you can go through this link and see where we are right now. And happy to bring you up to speed.
Yeah, I think I did. Oh, sorry. Carry on, Cindy.
Okay. So one thing is, I'm not targeting to 1.7 milestone. So we should change it to next milestone.
Okay. Yeah, that's what I was expecting for someone new to the code base. It is a big feature. So yeah, it'd be good to make some progress in 1.7. But yeah, I was even doubtful we'll be able to complete it. So changing it to 1.8 sounds good.
Sounds good. Quentin, go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, I was just going to mention to Nikhil that I have actually given you all the background and sent Cindy to all of the previous documents and issues and things. And she's undertaken to essentially consolidate those into a new, refreshed version of the design that we're actually going to implement now.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So basically, I will clone Nikhil's design doc and refresh it to like, I think the open issues are 2. One is the design on using proxy API versus caching. The second one is like if we need to change the API, how it's called, adding the clusters or not. I'm planning to make it step by step. Like say we can do in stages.
Okay, yeah, that sounds great. And there were a few more questions that came up while I was thinking about it. So I'll just post them on the issue and we can discuss them.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks.
Awesome. Just on time.
Nice timing.
Yeah. There are obviously a lot more things on the agenda. I also wanted to discuss about build corp rotation.
Okay.
Yeah, but I'm fine.
Kind of wait a
Yeah, go ahead, Quentin.
Now I was going to say, is there anything that's too urgent to wait until next Monday?
I think
maybe we just pick it up then.
Yeah, I think that's fine.
One thing we do need, incidentally, just before we disband, is that for some reason, and I don't understand how all these things work, some people can have issues assigned to them and other people cannot, and that's causing quite a lot of pain and suffering.
Yeah, I think that's a known issue. Not everyone. So the way GitHub works, you need to be added to the org, and once you're added to the org, it's like all or nothing permission model. So there's some restriction of when you can be added to an org. So for new members, they generally need like a proxy. So you can assign, I see this is what you did already. You can assign it to yourself as a proxy for someone else.
Okay, all right, I'll carry on doing that then.
We should, I guess the thing we need to do is schedule a meeting this week to talk about cluster selection.
Yeah,
and maybe
that's on me. I'll do that.
And maybe a meeting to talk about version skew.
And I don't think we'll be able to do version skew in 1.7.
Okay, so we can.
But if there are enough people interested who want to discuss it,
okay. It seems like cluster selection is more important and more pressing.
And especially because I want like Dan Wilson's implementation to be part of 1.7.
So then I guess we can hold off on version skew unless somebody feels really strongly that we need to talk about it now.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Cool.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.